Well, it is wonderful to have this opportunity to be with you today, the oldest member-based group in Australia, business group, representing more than 22,000 businesses across New South Wales and the ACT. And the work that you are doing, the paper you're producing today, demonstrates that we do share one very strong common goal with my government, and that is making New South Wales the #1 place for commerce and for industry, the #1 place for doing business. Now, your New South Wales Reclaiming First document sets out a wide-ranging agenda for the economic future of the state, and for that, you're to be congratulated. Recommendations covering taxation, infrastructure, health, and other areas of public policy. Now, obviously, we welcome this initiative, just as we welcome any initiative that contributes to the constructive debate about shaping the future of New South Wales. Fresh thinking, new ideas, these things are the lifeblood of a dynamic economy and a progressive government. So every one of your recommendations will be considered by my team. I know we can work hand in hand because there is common ground between us on major aspects of public policy. Now, your document's called Reclaiming First. But let's not forget, there are many areas in which New South Wales is already first, most notably leading Australia on the path to economic recovery. Now, New South Wales has led Australia's recovery out of the global financial crisis. This is a fact. New South Wales growth for the first half of 2009-10 was at 3.9%, ahead of all other states. Ahead of Victoria at 3.3%, ahead of Queensland at just 0.9%. And each day, New South Wales brings more good economic news for Australia. Only yesterday, my colleague, the Treasurer, Eric Rusendale, welcomed the latest ANZ statistics, the survey of monthly job ads, recording the highest increase in 11 years, up 14.4% in New South Wales compared to an average on the national average of 13.1%. Now, internet job ads tell a similar story, showing New South Wales is leading the nation with growth in internet ads at 3.57% in February. Now, our unemployment rate is falling faster than the national average, and on a trend basis, employment in New South Wales has now grown every month since April 2009. And there's more good news. Residential building approvals rose by a remarkable 95% during the past year. New house sales are up 26% compared with a year ago. This is almost double the national average. And New South Wales leads the nation in growth in new private capital, in the investment in new private capital, with a 16.1% increase into the December 2009 quarter. And New South Wales continues to lead the nation's retail recovery, sales growing by 12.2% since the worst days of the global financial crisis. There are other important areas in which New South Wales leads the nation: the highest capital infrastructure spend of any state over a 4-year period, the best literacy and numeracy results for our students in year 3 and 5, the best paid nurses in Australia, the best performing emergency departments in the nation, the highest percentage of elective surgery patients in the nation seen within the recommended time frame, leading the country in the rollout of the federal economic stimulus package, our trains running 95% on time, outperforming Victoria's privately run train system, and figures that are being released today show New South Wales is leading the nation's economic recovery in tourism. So in this context, talk about New South Wales holding Australia back is simply out of line with the facts. But having these facts in perspective is critical to making confident decisions about the next 5, 10, and 25 years in this state. We're now embarked upon a confident and a positive path to renewed growth and recovery. And it's in that context that we'll be considering the Chamber's initiatives. Now, do not for a moment confuse this confidence with complacency. These are different things: confidence and complacency. One we have, one we will never have. Our economic recovery still has a long way to go. We need to capitalise on it to build on new platforms for long-term prosperity and business confidence in this state. We will do this by improving infrastructure, by cutting red tape and reducing business burden, and restructuring government and particularly federal-state relationships. We've undertaken the biggest overhaul of the New South Wales public service in 30 years. We've committed to a better services and delivery task force, including a series of whole-of-government expenditure reviews, beginning with a review of ICT expenditure and legal costs. And in a time of severe budget pressure and global uncertainty, during which we've preserved New South Wales' AAA credit rating, we've also cut payroll tax to 5.6% from 1 January this year. We'll cut it again to 5.5% next year, and we've indexed thresholds to eliminate creep. And let's not forget, in New South Wales, 90% of businesses do not pay payroll tax, and that our concession for businesses in areas of higher unemployment provide strong incentives to many regional parts of the state. And that's another focus of the Chamber's recommendations. On that vital question, the question we're debating right now as a nation, reforming our health system, we've welcomed the opportunity presented by the Prime Minister's announcement. We've made it clear we want to work with the Commonwealth on this one, the fundamental reforms that are needed so that our healthcare services are delivered in a sustainable way here in New South Wales and indeed across the nation. This government's long supported the need for change to this system, and we've rapidly convened a consultation process in response to the Prime Minister's proposed changes. We want to ensure that we go into COAID armed with the most up-to-date information and with the best advice available from our clinicians, our doctors, our nurses, our consumers, so that we present the best possible case on behalf of the families of New South Wales. Now, giving a high priority to infrastructure is another goal that the Chamber and the government shares. We've commenced a $65 billion infrastructure investment over the next 4 years. It is, as I've said, the highest capital spend of any state over the 4-year period. It's the largest investment in infrastructure in the history of New South Wales, supporting around 165,000 jobs a year. But as anyone in this audience will know, funding is one thing, planning certainty is another. So we've delivered a major overhaul to our planning system, including streamlining approval processes for projects of state significance. If you'll pardon me for being a little political for the moment, it is worth pointing out that the New South Wales opposition have long promised that they will abolish Part 3A of the planning system, that they will return planning powers, all planning powers, to local councils. This is a clear point of difference between the opposition and the government. Not only does my government see Part 3A as crucial to securing investment in New South Wales, and since September 2008, the government's made a number of approvals supporting over 87,000 jobs and more than $32 billion worth of investment. Because anyone who is in business knows that certainty of process, prompt decision-making are the keys to an investment-friendly climate. Now, when I took over the planning portfolio, I set the following goals for the state's major project system. 85% of projects determined within 3 months, 95% determined within 5 months, no project to take longer than 8 months. Now, I must admit, when I announced those figures, there was a bit of skepticism that we could even come close to achieving those goals. But the facts are speaking for themselves. The most recent figures indicate that 72% of our major projects were determined within 3 months, and indeed, no project has taken longer than 8 months. One of the other significant changes we introduced to the planning process were the joint regional planning panels and the New South Wales Housing Code. Now, those regional planning panels, as many of you will know, determine projects between $10 and $100 million. They depoliticize planning decisions by taking the local politics, not the local opinions, but the local politics, out of planning decisions.